Hi, welcome back to Less Stress for You and I. This episode we will be dealing with mass incarceration. This episode is starting off with the well-being of children in the United States. How the United States performs in recent international rankings. Two sets of international rankings were recently issued. One from the UNICEF, Child Well-Being in Rich Countries, and the other from the World Economic Forum, the Global Competitiveness Report, 2012-2013. The United States ranks 26 overall for child well-being. This overall rank includes 26 for material well-being, 28 for child poverty rates, 25 for health and safety, 26 for infant mortality rates, 26 for low birth rate, 22 for immunization rates, 27 for educational well-being, 27 for preschool enrollment rates, number 25 for participants in further education, number 16 for educational advancement by the age of 15. Number 29 for the overall overweight. Number 2 for exercise. Number 29 for teen pregnancy rates. Number 1 for alcohol. The United States received the top rank for absence of drunkenness. Number 4 for smoking. Again, absence. Number 11 for fighting. Number 12 for being bullied. Number 23 for housing. Number 27 for homicide. Number 3 for lack of air pollution. Number 23 for child self-reported life satisfaction. And number 28 for relationships with parents and peers. The top ranked countries for child well-being overall in order are number 1, the Netherlands, number 2, Norway, number 3, Iceland, number 4, Finland, number 5, Sweden, number 6, Germany, number 7, Luxembourg, number 8, Switzerland, number 9, Belgium, number 10, Ireland. Can we as Americans have our legislators invest in our communities? This was a report from a Huffington Post report.com. Thank you very much. And if you have any suggestions for us, please contact us at morrismorris910yahoo.com.
The brain actually doesn't fully develop until actually quite a bit later in life.
We've learned more about it in the last 5 years than in the last 5,000 years.
So, would you agree with the statement that oftentimes when we lose control of ourselves, because the frontal lobe was the last to develop, that's why the amygdala is so quick to take over and say, no, you feel this way instead, and this is more important than the way you think?
Are the amygdala, 2 nuggets of tissue, 1 in each half of the brain. They are no bigger than a fingernail, yet they are the brain's central command center for our emotional reactions.
What happens is that if you're looking at someone who has like a pretty bad anxiety disorder, or they had some kind of trauma, so you've got these parts of the brain, the amygdala, and the parts around it that are deeper in the brain.
It's called the limbic system. And this is very important in the processing of emotions.
So, how does this affect the people that we call criminals?
What makes some brains evil?
There are a lot of factors that go into someone, leading to developing some, whether it's a single crime or repeated crimes.
The capacity to control these impulses is extremely important.
That responds to information from our senses and instinctively presses the body's panic button.
To fully control ourselves, we don't have our full thinking ability or our full ability to control our impulses.
What scientists discovered is that as humans evolved, another part of the brain, called the cortex, also became involved in processing fear.
I think you may agree or correct me on this. One of our greatest gifts in our species is our adaptability. So is this the brain's way of trying to adapt to its negative situation by acting out in the way it thinks it'll help to survive?
The idea is to make sure that we get the right young people in detention that really need to be there, the ones that are actual threat to public safety, and not put the ones in there that need an alternative, you know. And we've always over-relied on detention, you know, and I kind of alluded to that when we first started, when I was a juvenile detective, you know. And I looked up, man, and I'm seeing all these black kids going in detention, and I'm seeing these white kids go get some treatment. Well, son, why did you do that? And the black kids, I don't know. And I was mad, you know, and so, yeah, the kid's a threat, you know, they throw him in there and ask a white kid, why'd you do that? And he was mad, so we'd go, well, let's get him on some meds.
From your professional viewpoint, what do you think would be a much more conducive or productive technique or methodology in order to deal with people that are incarcerated?
We have to figure out who's suffering from what and why. And we have a lot of those details. And so there are a number of methods we could use. You know, there's some people in the criminal and prison world are actually working on criminal reforms and working on evidence-based techniques to have a system that can help reduce crime, not just punitively punish people for it.
So when we look at this specifically, the other thing that I want to talk about that is oftentimes ignored as we look at responding to the criminal justice system is implicit bias. We don't talk about it, and even when we do, we don't go far enough. So usually implicit bias looks a little something like this. I'll use myself because people start getting uptight, like, what will she say? I'll use myself. The easy way where most Minnesotans do it, our Minnesota nice thing, we'll say it's something like, do I want those oatmeal raisin cookies that my brother was offering me? I was like, no, I don't like raisins, right? But if we go the next step, if he came with that platter with craisins and white chocolate in there, I would have took all his cookies. We say, oh, that's implicit bias, and she just doesn't like raisins, so she didn't choose those cookies. Or I have one colleague that says, oh, it's like the difference between choosing white bread or wheat bread or rye. It's like, no. Pause, time out here. Get back to common sense. Anytime our unconscious mind is influenced by something, what does it do? It impacts our action. So we know the truth to be told, dispel a myth once again that implicit bias doesn't exist in our legal system. Look at the 1993 report from the Supreme Court Racial Bias Task Force. Homework assignment number 3. Take a look, even if you read the executive summary. It's one page, but this is one of the highlights that I just wanted to share with you. If you take a quick look, 6% of the state's population are people of color, but they comprise 45% of the prison population. What's the easy answer? Myth again. People of color are more likely to commit crime, and we end the analysis there. But when we started to peel back the layers related to implicit bias, what did we find? A little bit of truth. A little bit of truth to see that from the beginning to end, when you have an encounter with law enforcement all the way to the point of sentencing, what do you see? Individual actors who make a decision that maybe that unconscious bias is rising up again. Maybe we see then that young people in the juvenile justice system, 2 similarly situated young people, same crime, just different hue, different outcome. We have to answer to that. And then we see it in adult criminal justice system as well. So what am I saying here? First, now I made one man very angry. I was like, he's gonna stomp out of my presentation. That's okay, because sometimes getting angry leads to growth too. But my colleagues all try to be politically correct. They just say, you make people uncomfortable. It's like, okay, whichever you choose, I own it, as long as you're thinking and you're taking action. And his was angry. I said, that's okay. Let me just sit down here. When you calm down, we can figure out whether or not we finish this presentation. Because I barely got past hello and started to talk about implicit bias. He raised his hand and said, you're calling me racially biased. I'm like, well, if you said that this quickly, you're calling yourself something.
Hi, I'm back. It's Jimmy's Rage. This episode will be dealing with mass incarceration. Help! I'm an American trapped. I have fallen and the justice system won't let me up. I can't vote. I can't get a job. I can't find a place to live. In some places, I can't get food stamps. How am I going to live? Help! I've fallen and I can't get up. I made a mistake and served my time, but this system prosecutes me all the rest of my life. Please send your donations to Justice for Americans. P.O. Box, One Nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, in care of the people. What are the mental effects we are subjecting to our nation? Thank you. Back to you, Saran.
Greetings, and welcome back to another episode of Less Stress for You and I. I'm Saran, and this is Saran's Perspective. Today we're considering mass incarceration. Very few things has hit the chapter of American history with such ferocity. When I think of mass incarceration, I can't even get the word out. I think, of course, of the Reagan era, when they started doing the arms for, the Contra deal, where we armed the Sandinistas by flooding the streets with drugs. And then Mrs. Clinton came up with, I would call it a misnomer, but she came up with the term super predator. Before you know it, minorities found themselves in a world of crap. It comes down to where the same substance under different forms were treated differently. So powder, cocaine, was treated a lot lighter than crack cocaine. Crack cocaine was considered to be much worse than regular cocaine, but that's only because of the availability. Now, we find ourselves at the point where we've damaged our country so badly. I mean, the corporations have taken over, building jails, running jails, almost a privatization of the jail system. Ladies and gentlemen, we should not be making money off the backs of people that have been locked up. We have slave labor. I mean, they work, but they get pennies on the dollar. A lot of people complain about minimum wage. Well, those are slave wages. So slavery still actually exists in the form of our prison systems. Earlier, Jimmy came on with a very succinct Jimmy's Rage, where he said, basically, I've fallen and I can't get up. I thought it was very eloquent, so eloquent that I have to repeat it. Many people cannot get jobs, they can't vote, they can't get fair housing. How is this fair? How is that time served? Because the whole notion behind going to jail is you serve your time for the crime that you've committed, and then you're done. And you go back home to your family and recommence with your life. But this is not what's being afforded to us. As American citizens, we do have the right to make amends, and this is not being afforded us again. We are number one in the industrial country in only one aspect, and that is incarceration. I think this is about as close to a sin as you can possibly get. So let's take the greed out of this particular system, the criminal justice system. Let's find a little bit of more fairness to it. Let's live up to the American ideal of equal protection under the law, because that is the concept that made America great. Well, let me rephrase that. That can make America great. because we have yet to live to our full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my perspective. I don't have a lot to say about it because it's so heart-rending that I just can't allocate the words properly that I would wish to express. So, I thank you for your time. Write your local senator, your local congressman, and you know, get it in their ears that, listen, we're not going to tolerate this noise anymore. We have the promise of the Constitution. It says well, it says all men, but all people have the right to live equally. That concept made us the greatest country in the world. Not corporate greed, not mass incarceration, none of those aspects. Let's get back to what made America great. Thank you. Saran, co-producer of Less Stress for You and I. Sir, I was wondering if you could revisit the issue once again of mass incarceration. You made claim that there are new programs being set up to avoid recidivism. This could also touch on the gentleman's issue that he was speaking on. Would you mind highlighting some of those programs that you're talking about that will aid people coming out of jail to realign with society again and become productive members?
Sure. It's a great question, and it's a very real issue because 95% of offenders who are in prison right now will eventually reach the end of their term and are going to come back into our community.
Yes.
Even if they're sentenced to 18 years or 25 years, when that time is up, they're back in the community. We want them to come back and be successful, which I define as, number one, not committing any new offenses, right? We want them to be safe in our communities. And to accomplish that, there are a number of things. The most successful program to reduce long-term recidivism is a good long-term job.
Absolutely.
Number one, good long-term job. They got the income, they can take care of themselves, they can pay for their families. If they have children, they can pay for housing. Second part is getting housing.
Right.
Because it's hard for a person with a felony conviction on their record to get housing. But in terms of, and that they have adequate supervision and assistance transitioning back into the community. When you're in a prison, it's a very structured environment.
We have less than a minute left.
Oh, I'll try to be quick. Very structured environment. When they go back into an environment where they have all the freedom to make all their own decisions, it's hard, right? So we got to beef up our community corrections system. We did fund the high risk revocation reduction program this year, which will help target those who are at greatest risk for reoffending when they go back in the community to reduce that. We've improved funding for the employee program, which is to give more workforce training skills so they can find and keep a job when they go back into the community as well. Okay. So we're doing a lot of good things there.
My name is Mr. Childry, and I'm currently on ISR, basically still incarcerated. Going through the CIP program, which has been a great support network for me and helping me. I'm committed to a positive change in my life and helping my peers transition successfully through a program called Freedom Works. Started back, I like to say that I was rescued and not arrested.
Hi guys, I'm Christine. I'm currently still incarcerated as well. I'm actually involved in a work release program through the DOC, where I'm at the VOA right now. I've had a long struggle with addiction, not drugs, just the lifestyle. And just kind of growing up, I grew up. That's what happened. I didn't really have, rules to follow. I just was a product of my community. I just grew up doing, what I needed to do to get by.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kevin Beasley. I was former boot camp CIP participant. It was actually a good program. Guess one of the first things I'd like to say is I'll probably never take an offer to speak after Pastor Danny Givens again. He's actually a voice for a million. He's actually what we needed, because after that it's like trying to perform after America's Best Band or something. So I'm kind of lost for words, but I'm actually here on the behalf of trying to push a felony forgiveness program. You know, because what the situation is when you're put in a situation where you only can depend on you and you're not getting a shot, then it gets extra difficult.
Hi, I'm Linda. When I was arrested in 2006, I was honestly relieved because I felt like I couldn't get out from under the financial crimes I was committing every day to get through the day. And honestly, I figured that I wouldn't have trouble reweaving the threads of my suburban life. I mean, I figured, quite honestly, I'm white, I have some college education, I would rebuild my relationship with my mother and move on from this point. So I was a successful prisoner. I went to Shakopee for 33 months, and I did all the programming I could. I did behavior modification treatment, and I moved in with my mom. And I went back to the U, and I had 100 credits from right out of high school, and I chose the major sociology with an emphasis on law, crime, and deviance because I thought it was ironic because I had just gotten out of prison.
My name is Lorraine Thigpen. I'm a representative from Hennepin County Drug Court. I entered drug court in 2014, January. It's been a great experience for me. Going into that, I was carrying a 3-year sentence for possession. And basically, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and God stepped in and intervened because I had been begging to get sober. Through drug court, I've gone through several programs that they have, restorative justice, DBT, which was a very useful class that I took. It helped me to identify my feelings and help with my impulsivity. Also in drug court, I have had 4 relapses. And yeah, there's sanctions that go along with that. I've been to the workhouse twice. But I'm currently coming up on graduation April 19th. And
my name is James Bryant. I just currently got out March the 14th of this year. I've been out reconnected with the Circle of Peace movement. That's how I got over here today. And I was with them while I was in Stillwater.
Scientists think goal setting works by assisting the frontal lobes. As the brain's supervisor, the frontal lobes are responsible for reasoning and planning.
Take action, lift your voice. So the first thing that I had here, end prison gerrymandering. What is that all about? Most people just say, oh, that's about voting, who has access to voting. No, that's about resources. That's about the economy. In Minnesota, it's a message that we don't like to talk about because what does it really mean? We measure federal aid by what? We measure federal aid and distribution by what? Population, U.S. Census report. And it didn't dawn on me until I was filling it out myself. So my mom, my brother, and I was like, okay, we got to do this family thing. Let's fill out all this stuff, right? We're doing paperwork. I said, okay. But then I paused like midstream, and they're like, hurry up so we can finish this. But I was like, pause, time out. So you mean to tell me if my brother was in prison, I don't count him on my U.S. Census? They're like, no. I was like, what do you mean, no? But hold on, time out again. Isn't it true that most families who have an incarcerated loved one send in money? And isn't it true if we connect the dots now, 95% of people are coming back home, they're coming back to the communities they left with less resources than when they started because all of a sudden my resources went to Shakopee, all of a sudden my resources went to Lino Lakes, Faribault, St. Cloud, and it didn't come back to Rondo. So raise your voice, students. Get involved. Make an impact. There's different ways to make an impact, and this is one.
For being here, for teaching me to focus on comprehension over career, that they make sure I learn what the schools were afraid to teach us, and also to thank my amazing wife for changing my life. Now, this award This is not for me. This is for the real organizers all over the country, the activists, the civil rights attorneys, the struggling parents, the families, the teachers, the students that are realizing that a system built to divide and impoverish and destroy us cannot stand if we do. All right? It's kind of basic mathematics. The more we learn about who we are and how we got here, the more we will mobilize. Now, this is also in particular for the black women, in particular, who have spent their lifetimes dedicated to nurturing everyone before themselves. We can and will do better for you. Now, what we've been doing is looking at the data, and we know that police somehow manage to de-escalate, disarm, and not kill white people every day. So what's going to happen is we are going to have equal rights and justice in our own country, or we will restructure their function and ours. Now, I got more, y'all. Yesterday would have been young Tamir Rice's 14th birthday. So I don't want to hear any more about how far we've come when paid public servants can pull a drive-by on a 12-year-old playing alone in a park in broad daylight, killing him on television, and then going home to make a sandwich. Tell Rakia Boyd how it's so much better to live in 2012 than it is to live in 1612 or 1712. Tell that to Eric Garner. Tell that to Sandra Bland. Tell that to Dorian Hunt. Now, the thing is, though, all of us in here getting money, that alone isn't going to stop this. All right? Now, dedicating our lives to getting money just to give it right back for someone's brand on our body, when we spent centuries praying with brands on our bodies, and now we pray to get paid for brands on our bodies. There has been no war that we have not fought and died on the front lines of. There has been no job we haven't done. There's no tax they haven't levied against us, and we've paid all of them. But freedom is somehow always conditional here. You're free, they keep telling us. But she would have been alive if she hadn't acted so free. Now, freedom is always coming in the hereafter. But you know what, though? The hereafter is a hustle. We want it now. And let's get a couple things straight. Just a little side note. The burden of the brutalized is not to comfort the bystander. That's not our job, all right? Stop with all that. If you have a critique for the resistance, for our resistance, then you better have an established record of critique of our oppression. If you have no interest in equal rights for black people, then do not make suggestions to those who do. Sit down. We've been floating this country on credit for centuries, yo. And we're done watching and waiting while this invention called whiteness uses and abuses us, burying black people out of sight and out of mind while extracting our culture, our dollars, our entertainment like oil, black gold, ghettoizing and demeaning our creations, then stealing them, gentrifying our genius, and then trying us on like costumes before discarding our bodies like rinds of strange fruit.